Crystal shards exploded across the white marble floor of the Grand Bellamy Hotel ballroom, 1,000 tiny mirrors reflecting the horrified faces of New York's elite. The golden liquid spread like a crime scene, creeping toward the polished Italian shoes of the man whose table she'd just bumped. Christian Bateman, tech billionaire, philanthropist, and according to Forbes, the fifth most powerful man under 40. Viola's heart slammed against her ribcage. I'm so... You stupid! Christian's voice sliced through the string quartet's gentle melody. Every conversation within 20 feet died. Do you have any idea what you've just done? She did. She'd been working high-end events for 3 years, and she knew the unspoken rules. Move like a ghost. Speak softer than silence. And never, ever make yourself visible to people who could destroy you with a phone call. Hey, beautiful souls! Before we dive deeper into this moment that's about to change everything, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And listen, how are you doing today? Really? I hope you're taking care of yourself because this story, it's going to take you on a ride. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that subscribe button because we're building a community here. People who love stories with depth, suspense, and endings that actually mean something. Trust me, you won't want to miss where this goes. Now, back to Viola, and the worst 60 seconds of her life. Christian Bateman rose from his chair with the deliberate slowness of a man who'd never been told to sit down. 6'2", dressed in a tuxedo that cost more than Viola's annual rent, with sharp cheekbones and eyes like polished slate. He was handsome in the way a blade was handsome, beautiful until it cut you. This tuxedo, he said, brushing at the champagne droplets on his sleeve, is Tom Ford. Custom. Do you understand what custom means? His voice carried across the ballroom, amplified by the acoustics designed for opera singers and keynote speeches. It means it was made specifically for me. It means you can't just buy another one. Viola's fingers trembled as she crouched to gather the larger glass shards. Sir, I apologize. I'll pay for the cleaning, You'll pay? Christian laughed, a sound without humor, sharp as the glass cutting into her palm as she fumbled with the pieces. You think your yearly salary would cover this? You think... He stopped, really looking at her for the first time. His lip curled. You people always think an apology fixes everything. You people. The words landed like a fist. Viola's spine stiffened, but she kept her head down, kept collecting glass, kept breathing through the familiar sting of being reduced to nothing in a room full of everything. Around them, the gala guests watched with the detached interest of an audience at a play. Some whispered. Others raised their phones, not to help, but to capture. In their world, humiliation was entertainment, as long as it was happening to someone else. Sir, the event coordinator rushed over, a thin woman named Patricia whose smile was as real as her hair color. I'm terribly sorry. Viola is one of our best... Your best? Christian's attention snapped to Patricia like a predator spotting movement. If she's your best, I'd hate to see your worst. This is the Humanitarian Achievement Gala. Do you understand the optics of having incompetent staff ruin a night where we're raising money for... He gestured vaguely. Whatever charity this is? Literacy programs for underprivileged children. Viola knew because she'd read the program 3 times while prepping the service station. She'd imagined, briefly, what her own childhood might have been like with access to books that weren't falling apart, with teachers who had time to see her as more than a statistic. She stood slowly, glass pieces cupped in her bleeding palm. It won't happen again, sir. Christian stepped forward. For one surreal moment, Viola thought he might actually strike her. The energy in the ballroom shifted. People leaned in, hungry for drama, for a story they could retell at brunch tomorrow with the perfect blend of shock and schadenfreude. But Christian Bateman didn't hit her. He did something worse. He looked her directly in the eyes, his face twisted with contempt, and he spat. A deliberate, calculated stream of saliva that hit her cheek and slid down toward her jaw. Time stopped. The string quartet's violins hung suspended mid-note. The whispers died. Even the city sounds beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows seemed to fade, as if New York itself held its breath. Viola felt the warmth of his spit on her skin, felt every pair of eyes in the ballroom burning into her, felt the weight of every humiliation she'd ever swallowed, every insult she'd ever absorbed, every time she'd made herself smaller to survive in spaces that were never designed for her dignity. Christian leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her. "Know your place." Then he straightened, adjusted his cufflinks, and walked away. Toward the bar, toward his circle of admirers who would absolutely pretend they hadn't seen anything, because in their world, Christian Bateman's anger was justified and her existence was negotiable. Patricia grabbed Viola's arm, her manicured nails digging in. "Bathroom. Now. Clean yourself up and do not come back out until your face looks professional. Do you understand?" Viola nodded. She didn't trust her voice. She walked through the ballroom with her head high, because she'd be damned if she'd give them the satisfaction of seeing her run, even as the spit slid further down her cheek, even as her palm bled through the napkin she'd grabbed, even as her entire body screamed at her to disappear. The bathroom was all gold fixtures and soft lighting designed to make wealthy women look flawless in their selfies. Viola locked herself in the furthest stall and finally, let herself shake. She pressed her bleeding palm against her mouth to muffle the sound of her breathing, sharp, ragged gasps that threatened to become sobs. The napkin was soaked red now, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the soul-deep exhaustion of being treated like she was less than human. "You people, know your place." She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. 3 missed calls from Han glowed on her screen. Her chest tightened. She'd silenced her phone for the shift, knowing he always called during her events to make sure she was okay, to hear her voice, to remind her she was loved. She should call him back. Tell him about tonight. Let him hold her through the phone with that low, steady voice that made her feel like she could breathe again. But Viola knew what would happen if she told Han Wick about this night. She knew about the part of him she pretended not to see, the part that operated in shadows, that commanded loyalty through fear, that had built an empire on the principle that debts were always paid. She knew because she'd seen glimpses, the way men twice his size looked at him with respect that bordered on terror. The way he could end conversations with a glance, the way his hands were gentle with her, but had done things she didn't ask about. He'd told her once, early in their relationship, "I am not a good man, Viola, but I will be good to you, and I will destroy anyone who isn't." She'd laughed it off then, thought it was romantic hyperbole. But she'd learned. Han Wick didn't make promises he wouldn't keep. If she told him what Christian Bateman had done tonight, if she told him about the spit still drying on her face, about the "you people" that echoed in her skull, Han wouldn't call the police or file a complaint or seek any normal form of justice. He would do what he always did when someone threatened what he loved. He would end them. Viola wiped her face with shaking hands, cleaned the blood from her palm, and made a decision that would haunt her. She would lie to the man she loved. She would tell him the event went fine. She would smile through the phone and say, "Just tired, baby, nothing to worry about." She would protect Christian Bateman from the one man in the world who could actually make him understand what powerlessness felt like. What Viola didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know as she steadied her breathing and prepared to return to the ballroom, was that someone had already sent the video. 27 people had recorded the moment Christian Bateman spat on her. 26 of them would bury the footage, unwilling to cross a man who could ruin their careers with a tweet. But one person, a young journalist named Sarah Cho, working the event undercover for an expose on charity gala corruption, had different plans. And the video she uploaded to a private server at 9:47 p.m. would find its way to exactly the wrong person's inbox by midnight. Not through social media, not through viral spread, through a network that moved information like currency, where loyalty was law and disrespect was a debt that demanded payment. By morning, Han Wick would know everything, and Christian Bateman's perfectly constructed world would begin its slow, surgical collapse. What do you think happens next? Drop your predictions in the comments. I love seeing your theories. Han Wick lived in a penthouse that overlooked the city like a throne overlooking a kingdom. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Manhattan's glittering sprawl, but he rarely looked at the view. He'd learned long ago that beauty was a distraction, and distractions got people killed. At 2:47 a.m., he sat in his study, a minimalist space with dark wood and darker secrets, reviewing acquisition reports for 3 shipping companies that would soon, quietly, become his. Numbers calmed him. Numbers didn't lie, didn't betray, didn't require the exhausting performance of normalcy. His phone vibrated. A message from Lisbeth Salander, his head of intelligence. Video. Requires immediate attention. Sending to private server. Han's jaw tightened. Lisbeth didn't use words like immediate unless blood had been spilled or was about to be. He opened his encrypted laptop and waited. The video loaded. 38 seconds that turned his blood to ice. He watched Viola, his Viola, the woman who laughed at his terrible jokes and fell asleep on his chest while reading poetry. The woman who'd somehow looked past his reputation and seen something worth loving. He watched her get spat on like she was garbage. Han played it again. And again. Memorizing the man's face, the contempt in his eyes, the deliberate cruelty of that moment. Memorizing every person who watched and did nothing. His phone rang. Viola. He almost didn't answer. Didn't trust himself to speak without the rage bleeding through. But he couldn't ignore her. Ever. Hey, baby. Her voice was too bright, too careful. Sorry I missed your calls. Event ran late. How was it? He kept his voice soft, gave her space to tell him the truth. Fine. Exhausting. You know how these things are. She laughed, and it sounded like glass breaking. Just want to come home to you. Lying. She was lying to protect him, or to protect the man who'd hurt her. Which was worse? Come home, Han said quietly. I'll wait up. After she hung up, he sat in the darkness for 17 minutes, perfectly still, while his mind worked through scenarios with the precision of a surgeon planning an operation. Christian Bateman, tech billionaire. Net worth, $8.7 billion. Companies, 4 major, 16 subsidiaries. Security team, private, expensive, experienced. Weaknesses, unknown. Han opened a new file on his laptop and titled it, Bateman, Christian, Assessment. Then he began making calls. Viola arrived at 3:30 a.m., exhausted and trying to hide it. Han was waiting in the living room, dressed in black slacks and a white shirt rolled to his elbows. The version of him that existed only for her, without the armor. Hey, you, she said, dropping her bag and crossing to him. He pulled her close. Breathing in her scent, lavender and something uniquely hers. His hands were gentle on her back, but his mind was calculating. The tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself too carefully, the faint redness around her eyes. Rough night? He asked. Just long. She pulled back, smiling up at him. How was your evening? Any exciting corporate espionage? He almost told her. Almost asked her point blank what happened. But Han had learned patience in a brutal world. Patience was how you survived when everyone wanted you dead. If she wasn't ready to tell him, he wouldn't force it. He would simply handle it. Boring paperwork, he said, kissing her forehead. Want tea? They spent the next hour in the kitchen, her talking about everything except the gala, him listening to every word she didn't say. She'd always done this, filled silences with stories, as if afraid that quiet meant abandonment. He'd learned her language. When she talked about her coworkers' drama, she was really saying, I need to feel normal. When she made jokes about rich people, she was really saying, I don't belong in your world and I'm terrified you'll realize it. I love you, he said suddenly, interrupting a story about a customer who'd demanded gluten-free champagne. Viola blinked. I I love you too. What brought that on? Just wanted you to know. He took her hand, the one with the bandage she'd tried to hide. What happened here? Oh, broke a glass. Clumsy. She shrugged. Hazards of the job. Another lie. But he let it go, filed it away with all the other pieces of the puzzle. What do you think? Should Viola have told Han the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you're loving this story, smash that subscribe button because it's about to get intense. By sunrise, Han knew everything. Christian Bateman, born to old money, amplified it with tech investments, cultivated a public image as a humanitarian while privately being exactly what the video showed. A man who believed people were ranked by their bank accounts. Married once, divorced badly, no children, parents deceased, sister estranged, close associates, 12 people who tolerated him because he made them rich. Actual friends, 0. Security detail, 8-man team, former special forces, loyal to paychecks not principles. Weaknesses, pride, temper, and an absolute certainty that consequences were for other people. Han closed the file and opened his contacts. First call, Elliot Alderson, a hacker who owed him a favor that could never be fully repaid. I need everything on Christian Bateman. Bank accounts, emails, calendar, the porn he watches, the searches he deletes. Everything. Timeline? 48 hours. Consider it done. Second call, Tyler Durden, who ran the network of underground fighters and enforcers that kept Han's empire functioning without police attention. Bateman's security team. I want names, addresses, families, debts. Find their pressure points. You starting a war? No. I'm ending one before it begins. Third call, Lisbeth Salander. Pull every business connection Bateman has. Who banks him? Who partners with him? Who needs him? And find out who else saw that video. Already on it. Boss? She hesitated. Viola doesn't know you know. Does she? No. Are you going to tell her? Han looked out at the city turning gold with dawn. Not yet. She tried to protect me by staying silent. I'll protect her by being louder than she can imagine. He hung up and allowed himself 60 seconds of pure rage, fists clenched, jaw tight, the kind of fury that had built empires and buried enemies. Then he breathed, centered himself, and began the systematic destruction of Christian Bateman's life. Not with violence. That was too quick, too merciful. With precision. Christian Bateman woke to 17 missed calls from his CFO. By the time he called back, 3 major investors had quietly withdrawn from his new venture capital fund. No explanation, just polite emails about shifting priorities and unforeseen circumstances. They're spooked about something, his CFO said, but no one's saying what. Christian shrugged it off. Investors were cowards, they'd come crawling back. Day 5. His head of security, Davis McCall, resigned, via email, at 3 a.m., followed by 4 other team members by noon. What the hell is going on? Christian demanded of the remaining guards. They wouldn't meet his eyes. By evening, they'd all quit. One left a resignation letter that said only, "We were told you're not worth dying for." Day 7. The New York Times ran a feature on the loneliness of modern philanthropy, an anonymously sourced piece suggesting that certain billionaires attended charity galas purely for tax breaks and social climbing, treating staff like props rather than people. They didn't name Christian, but everyone knew. His publicist quit that afternoon. Meanwhile, Viola was falling apart in slow motion. She'd been suspended from the catering company, pending investigation into the incident. Translation: they were deciding whether protecting Christian Bateman's reputation was worth keeping her employed. She hadn't told Han about the suspension, hadn't told him she was spending her days sending out resumes to restaurants that looked at her experience and saw nothing worth paying for. Hadn't told him that she woke up at 2 a.m. sometimes, feeling phantom spit on her cheek, scrubbing her face until it hurt. Han knew she was suffering. He saw it in the way she'd stopped humming while cooking, the way she checked her phone obsessively, the way she pulled away slightly when he touched her, as if she'd become something fragile, something that might shatter. It killed him not to tell her, "I'm handling it. I'm breaking him piece by piece, just hold on." But he needed her to trust him enough to tell him herself, needed her to believe he wouldn't become a monster in her name, even though that was exactly what he was doing. "Baby," he said one night, pulling her close on the couch. "Talk to me, please." Viola's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "I'm fine. You're not. And I need you to know, whatever it is, I can handle it. We can handle it." She almost broke, almost told him everything, but the words stuck in her throat, trapped behind the fear that loving Han Wick meant unleashing something she couldn't control. "Just hold me," she whispered. So he did. He held her while she finally cried, held her while she fell asleep, held her like she was the only thing in the world worth protecting. And the next morning, he made another call. "Elliot, send me everything you found. It's time to move to phase 2. Day 14. Christian's nightmare went from professional to personal. His ex-wife's lawyer contacted him with a records request, something about revisiting their settlement. His accountant called in a panic about an IRS audit. His sister, who hadn't spoken to him in 8 years, somehow got contacted by a journalist asking about their family history. And strangest of all, every private club he belonged to suddenly had capacity issues when he tried to make reservations. He was being erased from the world he'd ruled, and he couldn't figure out why. That afternoon, his remaining assistant, a nervous kid named Peter Parker who desperately needed the job, knocked on his office door. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. Tell them I'm busy." "I tried. He said you'd want to take this meeting." Peter swallowed hard. "His name is Han Wick." Christian's blood went cold. He'd heard the name in the whispered conversations of men who operated in shadows. Han Wick, the man who controlled half the underground economy in 3 cities, who'd built an empire on loyalty and fear, who'd never been arrested despite everyone knowing exactly what he was. Why would Han Wick want to meet with me? "Send him in." Han entered like he owned the building, which, Christian would later discover, he technically did through a shell corporation. He was younger than Christian expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp features and eyes that showed absolutely nothing. "Mr. Bateman," Han sat without being invited. "I believe we have something to discuss. I don't think 2 weeks ago at the Humanitarian Achievement Gala, you spat on a waitress." Han's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. "Her name is Viola Montana. Do you remember her?" Christian's stomach dropped. "Oh no. Oh Christ, no. I don't know what you're—" Han pulled out his phone and played the video. 38 seconds that had been haunting Christian's nightmares since investors started disappearing. "That's you, yes?" Han asked. "I want to be certain." "Listen, it was a mistake. Heat of the moment. I've had a stressful—" "That waitress," Han interrupted, his voice dropping 10 degrees, "is the woman I love, the woman I would burn this entire city for. The woman who, for 2 weeks, has been lying to me about what happened because she knows what I'm capable of, and she didn't want me to hurt you." The room felt too small suddenly. Christian couldn't breathe. She protected you, Han continued. Isn't that fascinating? You treated her like garbage, and she still tried to save you from me. But here's the problem, Mr. Bateman. I found out anyway. What do you want? Christian's voice cracked. Money? I can. I don't want your money. Han stood, buttoning his jacket. I want you to understand something very simple. The last 2 weeks have been me being kind. Investor meetings falling through, security teams quitting, minor inconveniences. That was me showing restraint. That was me honoring Viola's mercy. He leaned down, close enough that Christian could see the carefully controlled rage in his eyes. But my patience has limits, and you're about to learn what happens when I stop being kind. Han walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Bateman? Your building's lease expires in 6 months. I'm the new owner as of this morning. Start looking for new office space. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. If you're on the edge of your seat, leave a comment with, and let me know. Are you Team Han, or does this feel like it's going too far? Viola found out that night. She came home to find Han in his study, staring at a file marked Bateman. The video was paused on his screen, on her face, on the moment right before Christian spat. You knew, she whispered, the whole time. Han turned, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked vulnerable. I was waiting for you to tell me. So you just… what? Decided to destroy him yourself? Without talking to me? Her voice rose, 2 weeks of buried fear and anger finally erupting. Do you have any idea what you've done? I protected you. You made me a victim. She was crying now, furious and terrified. I didn't tell you because I didn't want this. Didn't want to be the reason you became someone you're not. Viola? No. She backed away. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You can't just… people can't just hurt the people you love and then you destroy their entire lives. That's not love, Han. That's possession. The words hung between them like a blade. Han's face went carefully blank, the expression he used in meetings with people he was about to eliminate. You think I did this to possess you? I think you did this because you can't stand not being in control. Viola grabbed her coat. I think you saw someone hurt me, and instead of letting me handle it, instead of trusting me to make my own choices about my own trauma, you went to war. And now Christian Bateman knows who I am. Now I'm not just some waitress he humiliated. I'm the girlfriend of a man he's terrified of. Do you understand what you've made me? I made you safe. You made me a weapon. She headed for the door. I need space. I need to think. Viola, please. But she was gone, the door closing behind her with a finality that echoed through the empty penthouse. Han stood alone in his study, surrounded by the evidence of his carefully orchestrated revenge, and realized he'd won every battle except the one that mattered. He'd protected her from Christian Bateman, but he'd lost her trust. And for a man who'd survived knife fights and betrayals and wars, nothing had ever hurt quite like this. Viola stayed with her friend Clarice Starling for 3 days. 3 days of crying and thinking and trying to untangle the mess of emotions. She was angry at Han, furious at Christian, but mostly, she was angry at herself. I should have told him, she said on the 3rd night, curled up on Clarice's couch. From the beginning, I should have trusted him. Should've, would've, could've, Clarice said. Question is, what are you gonna do now? Viola's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah Cho, the journalist who'd recorded the video. Can we meet? There's something you need to know about Christian Bateman. They met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. Sarah was young, ambitious, with fire in her eyes. I've been investigating Bateman for 6 months, Sarah explained. He's got a pattern. You're not the first staff member he's assaulted. You're just the first time someone with power decided to do something about it. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were testimonies from 12 other women, housekeepers, assistants, caterers, all with similar stories. All too afraid to come forward because Christian had money and lawyers, and the kind of reputation that destroyed anyone who challenged it. Your boyfriend made Bateman vulnerable, Sarah said carefully. He stripped away the protection. Now these women are willing to talk. We can break this story. Not as revenge, but as justice. Viola stared at the testimonies, her hands shaking. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was bigger than one night, one moment of cruelty. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Your story, on the record, with your face and your name." Sarah's expression softened. "I know it's scary, but you're not alone this time." Viola thought about Han, about the way he'd held her after that night without knowing why she needed it. Thought about the way he'd gone to war for her, even if his methods were terrifying. Thought about the woman she wanted to be. Not a victim, not a weapon, but someone who stood up and said, "This happened, and it was wrong." "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." She texted Han. "We need to talk." They met at the penthouse. Han looked like he hadn't slept in days, still wearing the same shirt, hair disheveled in a way that made him look almost human. "I'm sorry," he said before she could speak. "You were right. I made choices about your trauma without asking what you needed. I was so focused on punishing him that I forgot to ask if that was what you wanted." Viola crossed the room and took his hands. "I'm sorry too. I should have told you. I was so scared of what you'd become that I didn't trust you to make the right choice." "Did I? Make the right choice? Honestly? I don't know. But I know what I need to do now." She told him about Sarah, about the other women, about the story that was about to break. "I'm going on the record. Not as your girlfriend, not as someone you're protecting. As myself." Han's eyes filled with something that might have been pride. "You're extraordinary. You know that? I'm terrified. That's what makes it brave." He pulled her close. "Tell me how I can help. And I'll actually listen this time." She smiled against his chest. "Just be here. That's all I've ever needed." The article hit New York Magazine's website at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. "The Cruel Cost of Indifference. 13 Women Speak Out About Christian Bateman's Pattern of Abuse." By noon, it had been shared 847,000 times. By evening, Christian's board had called an emergency meeting. Viola's interview was the centerpiece, her face, her name, and the video that 38 seconds that had started everything. But surrounding it were 12 other stories, each one building a case not of isolated incidents, but of systemic cruelty protected by power. Christian called a press conference within hours, flanked by lawyers, trying to spin it as misunderstandings and disgruntled employees. But the court of public opinion had already decided. 3 days later, his company's stocks had dropped 42%. 7 executives resigned, 4 sponsors pulled out of his ventures. But the real reckoning came when federal prosecutors announced an investigation into labor law violations and workplace harassment at all Bateman-owned properties. Christian's empire didn't collapse overnight. It eroded, piece by piece, under the weight of accountability he'd spent decades avoiding. 2 weeks after the article, Viola got a call from Patricia, her old event coordinator. "The company wants to offer you your job back," Patricia said carefully, "with a raise, and an apology, and, look, I know this doesn't fix what happened, but—" "I'm not coming back," Viola said. Not angry, just certain. "But thank you." She had other plans now. Sarah had connected her with an advocacy group working to protect hospitality workers' rights. They wanted Viola to speak at their next conference, to help develop policies that would make sure incidents like hers couldn't be buried anymore. It wasn't revenge. It was transformation. The final confrontation happened on a rainy Thursday evening. Han had left Christian alone for weeks. Let the legal system and public opinion do what violence never could. But there was one last thing that needed to be said. They met in Christian's now nearly empty office. The man who'd spat on Viola looked hollowed out, 20 years older than his age. "What now?" Christian asked bitterly. "You've taken everything. Is this where you kill me?" Han almost laughed. "I'm not going to kill you, Mr. Bateman. That would make you a martyr. I'm going to let you live with what you've done, let you rebuild from nothing, the way Viola would have had to if you'd destroyed her career. Let you understand what it's like to be powerless." "She must be thrilled," Christian spat. "You two get to ride off into the sunset while I—" "She doesn't know I'm here," Han interrupted. "This isn't for her victory. This is for mine. Because I need you to understand one thing before I walk out of your life forever." He leaned forward. "The woman you spat on, she saved your life. She protected you from me when I would have done things that would haunt your nightmares. She saw you at your worst and still chose mercy. That's power, Mr. Bateman. Real power. The kind you'll never have." Han stood. "If you're smart, you'll spend the rest of your life becoming someone worthy of the mercy she showed you." He left Christian sitting in the ruins of his empire, finally understanding the price of cruelty. 6 months later, Viola stood on a stage in front of 300 hospitality workers, telling her story not as a victim, but as a survivor. Han sat in the back row, watching her transform pain into purpose, watching her help others find their voices. He'd learned something from her. That protection wasn't about eliminating threats. It was about empowering the people you loved to fight their own battles. After the speech, they walked through Central Park, her hand in his. "You know what the crazy thing is?" Viola said. "I'm grateful it happened." Han stopped walking. "What?" "Not grateful he did it, but grateful I survived it. Grateful it led to something bigger than just me. Grateful it showed me I was stronger than I thought." She squeezed his hand. "And grateful it showed me who you really are. Not the man who destroys people, but the man who was willing to stop when I asked." "I didn't stop. You listened. That's different." She smiled up at him. "I love you, Han Wick. All of you. Even the scary parts. I love you, Viola Montana." He kissed her forehead. "All of you. Especially the brave parts." They'd both learned something in those dark weeks. That love wasn't about possession or protection or revenge. It was about trust. About seeing someone's darkness and choosing to stand beside them anyway. About letting people make their own choices, even when those choices terrified you. Christian Bateman eventually faded from headlines, became a cautionary tale about unchecked power. He never fully recovered his empire, but he started donating anonymously to workers' rights organizations, not for publicity, but perhaps because he'd finally learned the cost of treating people as disposable. Viola continued her advocacy work, becoming a voice for people who'd been silenced. And Han? He stayed in the shadows, still running his empire, but now with someone who reminded him daily that power without compassion was just another form of cruelty. On their 1-year anniversary, Han took Viola back to the Grand Bellamy Hotel, not for trauma, but for reclamation. "New memory," he said, leading her to the ballroom. They danced alone among the tables, champagne glasses unbroken, dignity intact. And when they left, Viola walked out with her head high, not because she'd forgotten what happened there, but because she'd transformed it into something that could never hurt her again. She was loved, she was powerful, she was free. And that was the greatest revenge of all. So what did you think? Did this story hit the way it should? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what resonated with you. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button because we're building something special here. A community that believes in stories with depth, justice, and endings that actually matter. Where are you watching from? What story should I tell next? Your engagement means everything. Thank you for being here. Until next time, remember, your dignity is non-negotiable, your voice matters, and love, real love, empowers. It doesn't control.